The blizzard roared down from the Rockies with such fury that Zara Remington could barely see 3 feet ahead of her horse, and she knew with sickening certainty that she was going to die out here in the Colorado wilderness if she did not find shelter within the next hour. The wind cut through her wool coat like knives made of ice, and her fingers had gone numb on the reins 20 minutes ago. She had left Leadville that morning with clear skies overhead, intending to reach the neighboring ranch to deliver urgent medicine to the Hendersons, whose youngest daughter had taken ill with fever. The storm had come out of nowhere, as they sometimes did in these mountains during the winter of 1885, transforming a simple January day into a white hell. Her mare stumbled through another snowdrift, whinnying in distress, and Zara felt tears freezing on her cheeks. She was only 22 years old, had moved to Colorado just 8 months ago to work as a schoolteacher, and now she would never see her family in Boston again. Her parents had warned her about the dangers of the West, but she had been determined to make her own way, to prove she could survive without the suffocating expectations of Eastern society. Now that independence seemed like foolish pride. Through the howling wind, she thought she saw a dark shape looming ahead. At first, she assumed it was just another snow-covered boulder, but as her horse pushed forward, the shape resolved itself into a small cabin tucked against the mountainside. Relief flooded through her so powerfully that she nearly fell from the saddle. She urged her mare toward the structure, praying someone was home, praying they would not turn her away. She dismounted clumsily, her frozen legs barely able to hold her weight, and stumbled to the door. Her fist pounded against the rough wood with desperate urgency. For a long moment, there was no response, and panic clawed at her throat. Then the door swung open, and she found herself staring up at the tallest man she had ever seen. He stood well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that seemed to fill the entire doorframe. Dark hair fell nearly to his collar, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds. A thick beard covered the lower half of his face, and he wore simple work clothes, a flannel shirt and worn denim pants. For a moment, they simply stared at each other while snow swirled between them. "Please," Zara managed through chattering teeth. "I need shelter. The storm caught me on the mountain road." The man did not hesitate. He reached out and grasped her arm, pulling her inside with gentle firmness. "Your horse," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "Where is she?" "Right outside," Zara gasped. "I tied her to your porch rail." He was already moving past her, grabbing a heavy coat from a peg by the door. "Get by the fire. I will bring her to the barn." Then he was gone into the white chaos, leaving Zara standing in the warm interior of the cabin. She moved toward the fireplace on instinct, her body craving the heat that radiated from the crackling flames. The cabin was small but well-maintained, with a simple table and chairs, a narrow bed in one corner, shelves lined with canned goods and supplies, and a few personal touches that suggested the occupants spent considerable time here. A carved wooden figure of a horse sat on the mantel, and several books were stacked beside the bed. She was still trying to stop shaking when the door opened again, bringing a blast of cold air and the tall stranger. He shut the door firmly behind him and turned to study her with those intense gray eyes. "Your horse is in the barn with my animals," he said. "She will be warm and fed." He crossed to a cabinet and pulled out a thick blanket, which he brought to her. "You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch pneumonia. There is a screen in the corner you can use for privacy, and I have some dry things that might fit you." Zara nodded, accepting the blanket with trembling hands. Now that the immediate danger had passed, embarrassment crept in. She was alone in a cabin with a strange man during a blizzard, with no chaperone and no way to get word to anyone about her whereabouts. Her reputation would be destroyed if anyone found out. But survival took precedence over propriety, and she knew it. The man seemed to sense her discomfort. "My name is Pierce Vaughn," he said quietly. "I run cattle in these mountains during the warmer months and trap in winter. You are safe here, miss. I give you my word." There was something in his tone that made her believe him, some fundamental decency that resonated in his deep voice. "Zara Remington," she replied. "I teach at the school in Leadville. I was trying to reach the Henderson ranch with medicine for their daughter." Pierce nodded slowly. "I know the Hendersons, good people, but you will not be reaching them today or likely tomorrow. This storm sounds like it plans to stay for a while." He moved to the cabinet again and pulled out some clothes, a thick flannel shirt and wool pants. "These will be too large, but they are dry and warm. I will turn my back while you change." True to his word, he turned to face the wall, and Zara hurried behind the privacy screen with the clothes and blanket. Her fingers were still clumsy with cold, but she managed to peel off her wet dress, petticoats, and undergarments. Everything was soaked through. She dried herself as best she could with a corner of the blanket, then pulled on the oversized shirt and pants. Pierce had been right. They were far too large, and she had to roll up the sleeves and pant legs multiple times. She used her belt to cinch the pants at her waist, then wrapped the blanket around her shoulders before stepping out from behind the screen. "I am decent," she said softly. Pierce turned back around, and something flickered in his eyes as he looked at her. "I will hang your clothes by the fire to dry," he said. "Are you hungry? I have stew left from dinner." Zara realized she was starving. She had eaten a small breakfast before leaving Leadville that morning, and it was now well past noon. "Yes, please. That would be wonderful." He ladled thick stew into a bowl and brought it to her along with a spoon and a chunk of bread. Zara ate gratefully, feeling warmth spread through her body from both the food and the fire. Pierce poured himself coffee from a pot that sat on the edge of the hearth and settled into a chair across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "How long have you lived up here?" Zara asked between bites, wanting to fill the silence. "5 years in these particular mountains," Pierce replied. "Before that, I worked on ranches throughout Colorado and Wyoming, saved up enough to buy my own herd and lease grazing rights on this land." He paused, taking a sip of coffee. "It is a solitary life, but I prefer it that way." There was something in his tone that suggested pain behind those words, some story he was not telling. Zara found herself curious despite the strangeness of the situation. "Do you not get lonely?" Pierce was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I have learned that being alone is often safer than being with the wrong people." Zara thought about her own reasons for coming west, the endless rounds of social obligations and matchmaking attempts that had suffocated her in Boston. She understood seeking solitude, even if she had chosen teaching over complete isolation. "I suppose I can understand that," she said softly. The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters, and Pierce glanced toward the window. "The storm is getting worse. We may be here for several days." The reality of the situation settled over Zara like a heavy weight. Several days alone with this stranger, cut off from the world. She should have been terrified, but something about Pierce Vaughn inspired trust rather than fear. Perhaps it was the way he maintained his distance, or the gentle care he had shown for her horse, or simply the honest directness in his eyes. "I appreciate your hospitality," she said. "I know this must be an imposition." Pierce shook his head. "Out here, we take care of each other." "It is not an imposition, it is just what you do." He stood and collected her empty bowl. "You should rest now. The cold takes more out of you than you realize. You can have the bed, I will sleep by the fire." "I cannot take your bed," Zara protested. "You can and you will," Pierce said firmly. It is settled. She was too exhausted to argue further. The combination of fear, cold, and the sudden warmth had drained every ounce of energy from her body. She made her way to the narrow bed and lay down, pulling the blankets up to her chin. Pierce moved about the cabin quietly, banking the fire and checking the door and windows. The last thing Zara saw before sleep claimed her was his tall figure silhouetted against the firelight. When she woke, darkness had fallen and the cabin was illuminated only by the glow of the fire. She could hear the storm still raging outside, possibly even stronger than before. Pierce sat in his chair by the fire, reading one of the books she had noticed earlier. He seemed absorbed in the text, his brow furrowed in concentration. Zara sat up slowly, and Pierce immediately looked over. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Much better, thank you." She realized it was true, the bone-deep cold had finally left her body. "What are you reading?" Pierce held up the book so she could see the spine. "Shakespeare. The Tempest. Do you know it?" Zara was surprised. She had not expected a mountain man to be reading Shakespeare. "Yes, I taught it to my older students last fall. It is one of my favorites." Something like pleasure crossed Pierce's face. "Mine as well. There is something about Prospero's Island that reminds me of these mountains. Isolated, magical in its own way, both prison and sanctuary." They talked about the play for a while, and Zara found herself increasingly fascinated by this contradictory man. He spoke thoughtfully and intelligently, revealing an education that seemed at odds with his chosen profession. When she mentioned this, he smiled slightly. "I attended university back east for 2 years," he explained. "Studied literature and philosophy, but my father died and I had to leave to support my mother and younger sisters. Came west to make money faster than I could as a clerk or teacher." His expression darkened. "My mother passed 5 years ago and my sisters are both married now with families of their own, so I stayed out here." "Do you miss them?" Zara asked gently. "Every day," Pierce admitted, "but I visit when I can and they seem happy. That is what matters." He stood and moved to the stove. "Are you hungry again? I can heat up more stew." They ate together, and Zara found herself talking more freely than she had with anyone since arriving in Colorado. She told Pierce about her life in Boston, the expectations that had felt like chains, her desire to do something meaningful with her life rather than simply becoming some man's ornamental wife. He listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was genuinely interested. "Do you like teaching?" he asked. "I love it," Zara said emphatically. "The children are wonderful, so eager to learn, and I feel like I am making a real difference helping them build better futures." She paused. "Though some of the parents are skeptical of having a woman teacher, especially one from the East," Pierce nodded. "People out here can be suspicious of outsiders. But if you have been teaching for 8 months, you must be proving yourself. That is how it works. Actions matter more than words in the West." They talked long into the night, until Zara's eyes began to droop again. Pierce insisted she return to the bed while he settled by the fire with blankets. As she drifted off to sleep, Zara found herself thinking that Pierce Vaughn was unlike any man she had ever met. The next morning dawned gray and still stormy. Snow continued to fall in thick sheets, and the drifts outside the windows were already several feet high. Pierce checked on the animals in the barn while Zara attempted to make herself useful by preparing breakfast from his supplies. She found eggs, flour, and salt pork and managed to create a reasonable meal. When Pierce returned, stamping snow from his boots, he looked surprised and pleased. "You did not have to do that," he said. "I need to earn my keep somehow," Zara replied. "Besides, I enjoy cooking when I have the chance. My boarding house in Leadville does not have a proper kitchen." They ate together, and afterward, Pierce taught her a card game he had learned from other trappers. They played for hours, laughing when Zara won 3 hands in a row despite being a novice. The ease between them felt natural, as if they had known each other for years rather than just a day. "Tell me about your cattle operation," Zara said as Pierce dealt another hand. "I confess I know very little about ranching." Pierce's face lit up as he described his small herd, the careful breeding he was doing to develop stock that could handle the harsh mountain winters, his plans to expand in a few years. His passion for the work was evident, and Zara found herself captivated by his enthusiasm. "It sounds like hard work," she observed. "It is," Pierce agreed, "but it is mine. I built it from nothing, and every success feels earned." He glanced at her. "I imagine teaching is similar, hard work but rewarding." "Very much so," Zara said warmly. The second day passed into evening, and then into another night. The storm showed no signs of abating. Zara's initial discomfort at the situation had faded entirely. Pierce was unfailingly respectful, always maintaining appropriate distance, never saying or doing anything that made her feel unsafe. Yet there was an undercurrent of something between them, an awareness that grew stronger with each shared meal, each conversation, each moment of companionable silence. On the third morning, Zara woke to find Pierce already up, standing at the window and looking out at the white landscape. The quality of light had changed, the storm had finally passed. "It stopped," she said unnecessarily, coming to stand beside him. "Yes," Pierce replied quietly. "A few hours ago." Zara should have felt relief. She could return to Leadville to her normal life. But instead she felt an unexpected sadness. "I suppose I should prepare to leave then," she said. Pierce turned to look at her, and she saw something complicated in his expression. "The snow is deep. It will take time to dig out and make the trail passable, perhaps another day or two." "I have already imposed on you for so long," Zara began, but Pierce shook his head. "It is not an imposition, Zara. I have enjoyed your company." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "More than enjoyed it, if I am being honest." Her heart began to beat faster. "I have enjoyed yours as well," she admitted softly. They stood close together, the morning light casting shadows across Pierce's bearded face. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. "I have been alone a long time," he said quietly. "By choice, because I believed it was what I needed. But these past few days with you have reminded me that isolation and peace are not the same thing." Zara felt her breath catch. "Pierce, I know you have a life in Leadville," he continued. "A career you love, responsibilities. I am not asking you to give that up. I just wanted you to know that these days have meant something to me. You have meant something to me." The vulnerability in his words touched something deep inside her. Zara realized that she felt the same way, that in just 3 days, this quiet cowboy had come to matter to her in ways she could not fully explain. "They have meant something to me too," she whispered. Pierce smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Then we have time to figure out what that means. No rush, no pressure. Just time." They spent that day working together to dig out from the snow. Pierce showed Zara how to properly shovel a path to the barn, and she helped him feed the animals and check that they had weathered the storm well. Her mare greeted her with obvious affection, and Pierce's own horses, along with several cattle sheltered in the larger barn, all appeared healthy and content. "You take good care of them," Zara observed as Pierce checked each animal thoroughly. "They depend on me," Pierce said simply. "I owe them that care." That simple statement revealed so much about his character. Pierce Vaughn was a man who took his responsibilities seriously, who valued the creatures and people in his care. It was such a contrast to many of the men Zara had known in Boston, who viewed animals as mere property and women as decorative possessions. That evening, they cooked dinner together in the small cabin. Zara made biscuits while Pierce prepared venison steaks from his stores. They moved around each other with surprising ease, as if they had done this many times before. When Pierce accidentally brushed against her while reaching for the salt, they both froze for a moment, awareness crackling between them. "Sorry," Pierce murmured, but he did not move away immediately. "It is all right," Zara said, looking up at him. She was acutely conscious of how close he was, how tall he stood, the warmth radiating from his body. Pierce raised one hand and cupped her cheek, his calloused palm gentle against her skin. "Zara," he said, her name a question and a prayer. She leaned into his touch, her own hand coming up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heart beating fast beneath her palm, matching the rhythm of her own. "Yes," she whispered, though he had not asked a specific question, but they both knew what she was saying yes to. He bent slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was soft at first, almost tentative, as if he was afraid she might break. But Zara responded eagerly, her arms sliding around his neck, and the kiss deepened. Pierce pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair while the other wrapped around her waist. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Pierce rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since you first arrived," he admitted. "I wish you had done it sooner," Zara replied, making him laugh. They ate dinner in a glow of new intimacy, touching hands across the table, sharing smiles that held promises of more to come. After the meal, Pierce built up the fire and they sat together on the blankets by the hearth, Zara tucked against his side with his arm around her shoulders. "What happens when you go back to Leadville?" Pierce asked quietly. Zara had been wondering the same thing. "I return to teaching, I suppose. But that does not mean I could not visit you, or that you could not visit me in town." "I would like that," Pierce said. "Very much." He paused. "Zara, I know this has all happened very quickly. We have only known each other a few days, but I feel something with you that I have never felt before. Like I have been waiting for you without even knowing it." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes because she felt exactly the same way. "I thought I came west to escape something," she said. "To run away from a life I did not want, but maybe I was running toward something instead. Toward this, toward you." Pierce tightened his arm around her. "I built this life in the mountains because I thought I needed to be alone to be whole, but you have shown me that I was wrong. I was not whole, I was just hiding." He turned to look at her directly. "You have made me want to stop hiding." They kissed again, longer and deeper this time, and Zara felt heat pooling in her belly. But Pierce kept things gentle, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms by the fire, and Zara had never felt safer or more content. The next morning brought brilliant sunshine and a landscape transformed into a glittering wonderland of white. Pierce declared the trail passable, though still difficult. "I should escort you back to Leadville," he said. "Make sure you arrive safely." Zara nodded, though part of her wanted to refuse, to stay here in this cabin where the world felt simple and right. But she had responsibilities, students who depended on her, and the Hendersons still needed their medicine. They prepared for the journey together, Pierce saddling both horses while Zara changed back into her own clothes, now dry and warm. Pierce packed supplies for the trip, including food and extra blankets in case of emergency. The ride back to Leadville took most of the day. The snow was deep in places, requiring them to go slowly and carefully. But the sun shone brilliantly overhead, and the mountain views were breathtaking. Pierce rode close beside her, ready to help if her mare struggled, and they talked constantly, learning more about each other with every passing mile. "Tell me about your sisters," Zara asked at one point. Pierce's face softened. "Margaret is the oldest, 2 years younger than me. She married a banker in Denver and has 3 children. She always was the practical one. Emma is 23 now, married to a farmer near Colorado Springs. She just had her first baby, a son." He smiled. "She writes me letters full of stories about him. I have only met him once, but I plan to visit again in the spring." "They sound wonderful," Zara said warmly. "Do they know about your ranch?" "They do, and they worry about me being alone up here," Pierce admitted. "Margaret is always trying to convince me to move to Denver, find a wife, settle into something safer." He glanced at Zara. "I wonder what she would think of you." "Would she approve?" Zara asked, suddenly nervous. "She would love you," Pierce said with certainty. "They both would. Any woman brave enough to come west alone and build her own life, who loves teaching and reads Shakespeare, who can hold her own in a snowstorm. They would absolutely love you." As they descended from the mountain heights, the town of Leadville came into view. The bustling mining town sat at over 10,000 feet elevation, surrounded by the towering peaks of the Rockies. Even in winter, smoke rose from countless chimneys, and the sounds of industry carried on the cold air. Zara felt a knot forming in her stomach. Once they reached town, reality would intrude. People would see her arriving with Pierce after several days away. There would be talk, speculation, judgment. Her reputation as the respectable schoolteacher would be at risk. Pierce seemed to sense her tension. "Do you want me to leave you at the edge of town?" he asked quietly. "I understand if you would rather not be seen with me." "No," Zara said firmly, surprised by her own vehemence. "No, I am not ashamed of you or what happened. You saved my life, Pierce. Anyone who judges that can answer to me." Pride flashed in his gray eyes. "That is my brave teacher," he murmured. They rode into Leadville together, and Zara directed Pierce to the boarding house where she lived. As predicted, heads turned as they passed, and Zara could see the curtains twitching in windows as curious residents watched. Let them look, she thought defiantly. At the boarding house, Pierce helped her dismount and retrieved her saddlebags from her mare. He handed them to her, his fingers lingering on hers for a moment. "When can I see you again?" he asked. "I teach Monday through Friday," Zara said. "But I am free on weekends. Could you come to town next Saturday?" "Wild horses could not keep me away," Pierce promised. He glanced around at the watching windows. "I should kiss you goodbye properly, but I do not want to damage your reputation more than necessary." Zara smiled mischievously. "I think the damage is already done. Might as well be worth it." She rose on her toes and kissed him firmly on the lips, right there in the street where anyone could see. When she pulled back, Pierce looked stunned and delighted. "You are remarkable," he said. "I learned from the best," Zara replied. "Travel safe, Pierce. I will see you Saturday." She forced herself to turn and walk into the boarding house without looking back, though every instinct urged her to run after him. Inside, her landlady, Mrs. Humphrey, was waiting with pursed lips and crossed arms. "Miss Remington, where on earth have you been? We were worried sick when you did not return days ago. Some were saying you must have frozen to death in that storm." "I got caught in the blizzard on my way to the Henderson Ranch," Zara explained calmly. "Fortunately, I found shelter at a cabin belonging to Mr. Pierce Vaughn. He was a perfect gentleman and ensured my safety until the storm passed." Mrs. Humphrey's expression suggested she had her doubts about the perfect gentleman part. "People will talk, you know. People always talk," Zara said with a shrug that was braver than she felt. "I am alive and well, and that is what matters. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to clean up and prepare lessons for tomorrow. My students have already missed enough school." She swept past the older woman and up to her small room, closing the door firmly behind her. Only then did she allow herself to lean against the wood and take a shaky breath. What had she done? In the span of a few days, she had fallen for a mountain cowboy and potentially ruined her reputation in the bargain. But when she thought of Pierce's gray eyes and gentle hands, his intelligence and kindness, the way he made her feel safe and challenged and cherished all at once, she could not regret it. Not even a little. The next week dragged by with agonizing slowness. Zara threw herself into her teaching, working extra hard to make up for the days lost to the storm. Her students were full of questions about her adventure, and she answered honestly but carefully, making sure they understood that Pierce had been a rescuer, not a threat, as Mrs. Humphrey had predicted. There was talk. Some of the more conservative town members questioned whether Zara should continue teaching, given the impropriety of spending several unchaperoned days with a man. But others, particularly the parents of her students, defended her vigorously. The Hendersons, when they received the medicine she had been trying to deliver, were especially vocal in their support. "Miss Remington nearly died trying to help our Sarah," Mrs. Henderson declared loudly at the general store. "Anyone who criticizes her for surviving is a fool." By Wednesday, the controversy had mostly died down, replaced by newer gossip about a disputed mining claim. Zara breathed a sigh of relief. Her position seemed secure. On Saturday morning, she woke early and took extra care with her appearance, wearing her best dress and pinning her hair in an elaborate style. Mrs. Humphrey gave her a knowing look at breakfast, but said nothing. Pierce arrived promptly at 10 in the morning, looking devastatingly handsome in clean clothes with his beard freshly trimmed. He carried a small bouquet of winter flowers that he must have searched hard to find. "For you," he said, presenting them with an awkward formality that Zara found endearing. "They are beautiful," she said sincerely. "How did you find flowers in January?" "There is a spot on my land where they grow in the shelter of the rocks," Pierce explained. "I thought of you when I saw them." They walked through town together, aware of the stares but ignoring them. Pierce told her about his week, the cattle he had checked, the repairs he had made to his barn. Zara shared stories about her students and the small triumphs and challenges of teaching. They had lunch at the hotel restaurant, the finest establishment in Leadville, and talked for hours over beef stew and fresh bread. Pierce asked about her family in Boston, and Zara found herself describing her parents with more charity than she had felt in months. "They meant well," she said. "They just wanted me to be safe and secure. They could not understand why that was not enough for me." "Do you miss them?" Pierce asked. "Sometimes," Zara admitted. "I miss my mother's laugh and my father's terrible jokes, but I do not miss the life they wanted for me. I feel more myself here in Colorado than I ever did in Boston." Pierce reached across the table and took her hand. "I am glad you came here," he said quietly, "even if it took a blizzard to bring you to me." They spent the afternoon walking along the creek that ran through town, now frozen and covered in snow. Pierce told her more about his dreams for his ranch, plans to expand his herd and perhaps build a proper house instead of just the cabin. "Would you want to stay in the mountains permanently?" Zara asked. "Or would you ever consider moving closer to town?" Pierce considered this carefully. "I love the mountains," he said, "but I am realizing that what I love about them might not be the isolation itself, but the peace and the connection to the land. I could have that closer to Leadville, with a ranch in the valley, perhaps." He looked at her intently. "Would you ever consider leaving teaching to live on a ranch?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Zara thought about her students, the satisfaction of watching them learn and grow. But she also thought about waking up next to Pierce every morning, building a life together, perhaps teaching their own children someday. "I would miss teaching," she said honestly. "But I could possibly tutor private students, or perhaps teach at a different school if one is closer to wherever you settle." She squeezed his hand. "Pierce, if you are asking what I think you are asking, my answer is that I would consider anything that meant being with you." Pierce stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Zara, I know this is fast. We have known each other less than 2 weeks, but I am 30 years old and I have never felt this way about anyone. You are brilliant and brave and beautiful, and every moment with you feels right in a way nothing else ever has." He took both her hands in his. "I am not asking you to marry me right now. That would be unfair and too quick. But I am asking if you would be willing to explore this, to see where it leads, to court properly and see if what we felt in that cabin was real or just the intensity of the situation." "It was real," Zara said with absolute certainty. "What I feel for you is real, Pierce. And yes, I want to explore this. I want to court properly and spend time together and see what we can build." The smile that broke across Pierce's face was like the sun coming out. He pulled her into his arms, right there on the main street of Leadville, and kissed her thoroughly. When they broke apart, Zara was breathless and laughing. "You are going to destroy my reputation completely," she said, not caring in the slightest. "Then I suppose I will have to marry you to make an honest woman of you," Pierce teased. "Eventually, when the time is right." They walked back toward the boarding house as the sun began to set, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of pink and gold. At her door, Pierce kissed her once more, sweetly and tenderly. "I will come back next Saturday," he promised. "And the Saturday after that, and as many Saturdays as you will have me." "That might be quite a lot of Saturdays," Zara warned. "Good," Pierce said simply. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Pierce came to town every Saturday, and occasionally during the week as well if the weather permitted. They walked together, had meals together, talked for hours about everything and nothing. Pierce met some of Zara's students and charmed them completely by carving small wooden animals for the younger children. Zara met some of Pierce's friends among the other ranchers and found herself welcomed into their community. In March, as the worst of winter began to ease, Pierce took Zara to his cabin for a proper visit. This time, she could appreciate the beauty of the location, the way the cabin sat nestled in a perfect spot with views of the surrounding peaks. Pierce showed her his full operation, the barn and corrals, the carefully managed grazing lands, the small stream that provided water. "This is wonderful, Pierce," Zara said sincerely. "I can see why you love it here." "It would be better with you here permanently," Pierce said. "But I know you have commitments in town." Zara had been thinking about this a great deal. The school year would end in June, and she would need to decide whether to renew her contract for the following year. The idea of leaving teaching caused real pain, but the idea of being separated from Pierce for another full year caused even more. "What if I did not renew my contract?" she asked slowly. "What if I finished this school year and then we got married in the summer? I could live here with you and perhaps start a small school for the ranch children in the area. There are several families with young children who have no access to education." Pierce went very still. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" Zara turned to face him, her heart pounding. "I am saying that I love you, Pierce Vaughn. I have loved you since that blizzard kept us snowbound together, though it took me a while to admit it. I am saying that these past few months have only confirmed what I felt then. You are my home, not a place or a position. Wherever you are, that is where I want to be." Pierce swept her up into his arms, spinning her around and laughing. "I love you too, Zara, so much. I have been trying to be patient to give you time, but every day away from you feels like torture." He set her down and cupped her face in his hands. "Marry me. Please, be my wife, build this life with me. We can start that school together, expand the ranch together, make a real home together." "Yes," Zara said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, absolutely yes." They kissed in the brilliant March sunshine, surrounded by melting snow and the first signs of spring. When they finally pulled apart, both were grinning like fools. "We should tell your sisters," Zara said, "and write to my parents. They will probably be shocked, but I think they will come around." "Margaret is going to be insufferable," Pierce said cheerfully. "She has been trying to get me married off for years. She will take complete credit for this somehow." They spent the rest of the day making plans, talking about the wedding and the school and all the dreams they wanted to pursue together. As evening fell and they sat together watching the sunset paint the mountains, Zara felt a sense of absolute rightness settle over her. "Do you remember what you said that first day?" she asked. "About Prospero's island being both prison and sanctuary?" Pierce nodded. "I remember." "I think I understand now," Zara said. "This place was your sanctuary, but it was also a prison because you were here alone. Now it can just be a sanctuary, a place of peace and beauty that we share." Pierce kissed her temple gently. "You see everything so clearly. That is exactly right." Word of their engagement spread quickly through Leadville and the surrounding ranching community. Most people were pleased, though a few of the more conservative residents continued to tut about the speed of the courtship. But Pierce and Zara ignored the criticism, too happy to care what others thought. In April, Pierce brought Zara to Colorado Springs to meet his sister Emma and her family. Emma was a warm, laughing woman with her brother's gray eyes, and she took to Zara immediately. Her husband, Jonathan, was a quiet farmer who clearly adored his wife and infant son. "I am so happy for Pierce," Emma confided to Zara while the men were outside checking on the spring planting. "He has been alone too long. I could see the loneliness in him even when he tried to hide it. But now, with you, he seems truly alive again." "He makes me feel alive too," Zara admitted. "I did not know I was looking for someone until I found him." In May, Margaret came down from Denver with her husband and children to meet Zara. Margaret was more formidable than Emma, with a sharp wit and an assessing gaze. But after spending a day with Zara, she pulled Pierce aside and announced that he had chosen well. "She is smart and strong," Margaret said approvingly. "She will be good for you. Do not mess this up, little brother." "I do not plan to," Pierce promised. Zara's parents surprised everyone by making the long journey from Boston to attend the wedding. Her mother cried when she saw Zara again, and her father looked uncomfortable in his Eastern suits amid the rough-hewn buildings of Leadville. But they could not deny the happiness that radiated from their daughter, and after meeting Pierce, they grudgingly admitted he seemed like a good man. "I still wish you had married someone from a better family," Zara's mother said privately. "But I can see that he loves you and that you love him. I suppose that is what matters most." "It is," Zara said firmly. "Thank you for coming, Mother. It means everything to have you here." The wedding took place on the first Saturday in June, just as school let out for the summer. It was held in the small church in Leadville, with most of the town in attendance. Zara wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, with wildflowers woven into her hair. Pierce wore a new suit that Margaret had insisted on buying for him, though he looked slightly uncomfortable in the formal attire. When Zara walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Pierce's face transformed with such obvious love and wonder that several people in the congregation openly wept. They said their vows in strong, clear voices, promising to love and honor each other through all the challenges ahead. "I never expected to find home in a person," Pierce said during his personal vows. "But that is what you are to me, Zara. My home, my heart, my everything. That blizzard brought you to my door, but I choose you every day since then and every day forward." Zara could barely speak through her tears. "I came west looking for freedom and purpose. I found both, but I also found something I did not know I needed. I found you, Pierce. You showed me that home is not a place or a position, but the person you love. You are my home, and I am so grateful that storm brought me to you." They kissed as husband and wife, and the church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the hotel, with food and music and dancing that lasted long into the night. Pierce proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, sweeping Zara around the floor with confidence. "Where did you learn to dance like this?" she asked, laughing as he spun her. "Margaret insisted all of us learn before she got married," Pierce admitted. "Said we would embarrass her at her wedding if we could not dance properly. I grumbled about it at the time, but I am grateful now." They spent their wedding night at the hotel, before heading up to the cabin that was now their home. Pierce carried Zara over the threshold despite her laughing protests, and they made love for the first time with the tenderness and passion that had been building between them for months. Afterward, lying tangled together in the bed, Zara traced patterns on Pierce's chest. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she murmured. Pierce kissed the top of her head. "Neither did I. For so long I thought I needed to be alone to be strong. But you showed me that letting someone in is not weakness. It is the bravest thing I have ever done." They settled into married life with remarkable ease. Zara discovered she loved the rhythm of ranch life, the early mornings and physical work, the connection to the land and animals. Pierce loved having her there, coming home from checking cattle to find her reading or cooking, talking over every decision, sharing every part of his day. In July, they began work on the school Zara had dreamed of. Pierce helped her convert one of his storage buildings into a proper classroom, building desks and shelves, while Zara painted cheerful murals on the walls and organized supplies. Word spread to the surrounding ranches, and by the time they opened in September, Zara had 8 students ranging from age 6 to 14. She loved this new form of teaching even more than the one she had left behind. The small class size allowed her to tailor lessons to each child, and the ranch children were eager learners, grateful for the opportunity. Parents paid what they could, some in cash and some in goods, but Zara did not care about the money. She was doing what she loved while building a life with the man she loved. Pierce's ranch continued to grow. With Zara's help in managing the finances and planning, he was able to expand his herd and improve his breeding program. Other ranchers began seeking his advice, recognizing his knowledge and skill. He also began taking on occasional hired hands during busy seasons, young men looking to learn the cattle business. In December, almost exactly a year after the blizzard that had brought them together, Zara discovered she was pregnant. She told Pierce on Christmas morning, presenting him with tiny knitted booties she had made in secret. Pierce stared at the booties in wonder, then at Zara, then back at the booties. "We are going to have a baby, we are," Zara confirmed, her face glowing. Pierce let out a whoop of joy and gathered her carefully into his arms. "I love you so much. Thank you for this gift." They spent the day making plans for the baby, discussing names and where to put a cradle, how they would manage the ranch and school with an infant. Pierce was simultaneously terrified and thrilled, already planning how to baby-proof the cabin and worrying about every possible danger. "You are going to be a wonderful father," Zara assured him, "just like you are a wonderful husband." Their son was born in late July of 1887, a healthy baby with Pierce's dark hair and Zara's bright blue eyes. They named him Thomas James after both their fathers, though they called him Tommy from the start. Pierce was besotted from the first moment, holding his son with awe and fierce protectiveness. "He is perfect," Pierce whispered, tracing Tommy's tiny fingers. "Absolutely perfect." Zara watched her husband with their child and felt her heart might burst from happiness. This was the family she had always wanted, even when she had not known she wanted it. This was home. Margaret and Emma both visited to meet their nephew, bringing their own children to play with the baby. Zara's mother surprised them by coming for an extended stay, helping with the baby and finally understanding why her daughter had chosen this life. "I see it now," she told Zara one evening as they rocked Tommy to sleep. "The peace you have here, the purpose. I still miss you terribly, and I wish you lived closer. But I can see that you made the right choice." "Thank you, Mother," Zara said, blinking back tears. "That means more than you know." As Tommy grew from infant to toddler, the ranch and school continued to thrive. Zara taught with her son playing in the corner of the classroom, and her students adored their little mascot. Pierce built a small addition onto the cabin, creating a proper bedroom for Tommy and making space for the growing family. When Tommy was 2, Zara became pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to a daughter in the spring of 1890. They named her Clara Margaret, after Pierce's mother and sister. Clara had her mother's delicate features and her father's serious demeanor, a tiny observer who watched everything with wide eyes. Pierce now had 2 children to dote on, teaching Tommy to ride almost as soon as he could walk and carrying Clara everywhere in a sling Zara had sewn. The sight of her tall, strong husband with their tiny daughter nestled against his chest never failed to make Zara smile. The school grew too, now serving 12 students from the surrounding area. Zara had to hire an assistant teacher, a young woman named Sarah who had recently moved to Colorado and was grateful for the opportunity. With Sarah's help, Zara could manage both teaching and her growing family. In the evenings, after the children were asleep, Pierce and Zara would sit together on the porch he had built, looking out at the mountains and talking about their days. Sometimes they discussed practical matters like which fields to rotate the cattle to, or which books to order for the school. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, content in each other's presence. "You ever regret it?" Pierce asked one evening when Tommy was 4 and Clara was 2. "Giving up your position in town to live out here?" Zara looked at him in surprise. "Never, not once." "Why do you ask?" Pierce shrugged. "I just want to make sure you are happy, that you do not feel like you gave up too much for me." Zara turned to face him fully, taking his face in her hands. "Pierce Vaughn, you listened to me, that blizzard that brought me to your door 5 years ago. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me the opportunity to build exactly the life I wanted, one where I could teach and have a family and be with someone who values me as an equal partner. I have never been happier or more fulfilled. Do you understand?" Pierce smiled, his gray eyes soft in the twilight. "I understand, and I feel the same way. You took my lonely mountain sanctuary and turned it into a home full of love and laughter. You are everything, Zara." They kissed as the sun set behind the peaks, the same mountains that had nearly claimed Zara's life, but instead had given her everything she never knew she needed. The years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Tommy started attending his mother's school when he turned 5, proving to be a bright student with his father's love of books and his mother's quick mind. Clara followed 2 years later, more artistic than academic, but with a creativity that delighted Zara. Pierce's ranch became one of the most successful in the region, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. He was elected to the local Ranchers Association and became a respected voice in the community. But his greatest joy remained his family, the evenings spent reading to his children or teaching them about the land. Zara's school gained a reputation for excellence, and she was frequently consulted by other communities looking to establish similar rural schools. She wrote articles for educational journals about her methods, and several universities asked her to speak about frontier education. But she always returned home to Pierce and their children, to the life they had built together. When Tommy was 10 and Clara was 8, Zara gave birth to their third child, another son they named Andrew Pierce. By now, Zara was an experienced mother, and the birth was smooth and uncomplicated. Pierce, however, remained as anxious as he had been with their first, pacing outside until the midwife emerged with the news that mother and baby were both healthy. Andrew proved to be the most adventurous of their children, always getting into mischief and exploring places he should not. He gave his parents plenty of gray hairs, but also endless entertainment. Clara appointed herself his guardian, watching over her little brother with maternal fierceness. The cabin was expanded twice more to accommodate the growing family. Pierce proved to be talented at construction, and with help from hired hands and neighboring ranchers, he transformed the simple cabin into a proper ranch house. It would never be fancy by city standards, but it was warm and comfortable, filled with books and handmade furniture and the evidence of a well-loved home. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Pierce took Zara back to the original cabin, which still stood and was now used for storage. They stood inside the small space that had sheltered them during the blizzard, remembering. "It seems so small now," Zara said, looking around. "I remember it feeling much larger." "We have grown since then," Pierce said, pulling her close. "In every way that matters." "Do you remember when you said I was remarkable?" Zara asked, leaning into his embrace. "I remember everything about those days," Pierce confirmed. "Every word, every look, every moment I fell more in love with you." "I fell in love with you too, even though I tried to tell myself it was too fast, too improbable," Zara admitted. "But my heart knew better than my head. My heart knew you were home." Pierce kissed her tenderly. "I spent so long building walls, convincing myself I needed isolation to be strong. Then a blizzard brought you to my door, and you demolished those walls without even trying. You showed me that true strength is not in being alone but in choosing to share your life with someone else. You are the bravest person I know, Zara, and I fall more in love with you every single day." "That is good," Zara said with a smile, "because we still have a long life ahead of us, and I plan to spend every day of it with you." They returned to their family as the sun set, walking hand in hand across land that was now fully theirs, past corrals filled with healthy cattle and fields ready for spring planting. The ranch house glowed with lamplight, and through the windows they could see their children playing inside, probably supposed to be in bed but clearly still awake. "We should scold them for being up late," Pierce said without much conviction. "We should," Zara agreed, equally unconvincing. "But maybe just this once, we can let it slide." They entered their home to find Tommy reading to his younger siblings, a chapter book they had probably already heard twice. All three children looked up guiltily when their parents entered, but Pierce and Zara just smiled. "5 more minutes," Pierce said. "Then everyone to bed." The children cheered and returned to the story while Pierce and Zara went to the kitchen to make tea. As they moved through the familiar routine, Zara thought about the long road that had brought them here. From that desperate ride through the blizzard to this moment of perfect domestic contentment, every step had been worth it. "What are you thinking about?" Pierce asked, handing her a cup of tea. "About how that blizzard changed everything," Zara said. "About how I thought I was just seeking shelter from the storm, but I was really finding my way home." Pierce nodded slowly. I understand. I thought I had built my home here in these mountains, but I was wrong. You were my home all along. I just had not met you yet. The mountains are just the beautiful backdrop to our life together. They stood together in the kitchen of their ranch house, listening to Tommy's voice reading to his siblings, the fire crackling in the hearth, the wind whistling softly outside. This was home, not the place but the people, the love that bound them together through all seasons and challenges. Years later, when their children were grown with families of their own, Pierce and Zara would still tell the story of the blizzard that brought them together. They would describe the storm's fury, the small cabin, the days of snowbound isolation that became the foundation for a lifetime of love. Tommy brought his wife and children to visit frequently, having become a teacher himself, inspired by his mother. Clara married a rancher from the neighboring valley and was renowned for her painted landscapes of the mountains. Andrew, true to his adventurous nature, became a surveyor, mapping the expanding West, but he always returned home to the ranch for holidays. On their 25th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, Pierce raised a glass in toast. 25 years ago, a blizzard brought the most remarkable woman I have ever known to my door. She was freezing, exhausted, and determined. She stayed for 3 days, and I fell completely in love with her. She stayed for a lifetime, and I fall more in love with her every day. To Zara, my wife, my partner, my home. To Zara, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Zara wiped tears from her eyes, overwhelmed with gratitude for this life, this family, this love. To Pierce, she said, her voice shaking with emotion, who taught me that home is not a place you find but a person you choose. Who showed me that strength and gentleness are not opposites but partners. Who has been my shelter in every storm. I love you more than words can express. They kissed while their family applauded and cheered, and Zara remembered standing in this same spot 25 years ago, wet and frozen and terrified. She remembered Pierce opening the door, pulling her into warmth and safety. She remembered thinking she was just seeking shelter from the storm. But she had been so much more than that. She had been finding her way home, to the man who would become her everything, to the life they would build together, to the love that would sustain them through decades of joy and challenge. The blizzard had kept them snowbound together for 3 days. But what she discovered in those 3 days would last forever. Pierce had been her home all along. She just had not known it until the storm brought her to his door. As the celebration continued around them, Pierce leaned close and whispered in her ear, "Thank you for being brave enough to trust me during that storm. Thank you for choosing me, choosing us, choosing this life. Thank you for opening your door," Zara whispered back. "Thank you for showing me what home really means. Thank you for loving me so completely." They stood together, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built, 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and made something beautiful from it. The mountains still loomed outside, constant and eternal, but inside was warmth and love and the absolute certainty that they were exactly where they belonged. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Pierce and Zara stood on their porch one more time, looking out at the moonlit landscape. The same peaks that had nearly claimed Zara's life now watched over them benevolently, silent witnesses to the love story that had begun in a snowstorm. "Do you think our grandchildren will understand?" Zara asked. "When we tell them about how we met?" "They will understand the facts," Pierce said thoughtfully. "The blizzard, the cabin, the 3 days. But they will not fully understand the feeling of it until they experience something similar themselves. That moment when you realize you have found the person you want to spend your life with and nothing else matters." "I knew it so quickly," Zara mused. Within hours, really. I tried to rationalize it as gratitude or the intensity of the situation, but my heart knew. So did mine, Pierce confirmed. When you pounded on my door that day, I had no idea my entire life was about to change. But the moment I saw you, something shifted inside me. Like I had been waiting for you without knowing it. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, then Zara spoke again. I used to think coming west was about running away from something. Now I know it was about running towards something. Toward you, toward this life, toward home. Pierce pulled her close, his arms coming around her in the embrace that had always made her feel safe. And I used to think I needed isolation to be strong. You taught me that real strength is in connection, in opening your heart even when it is terrifying. You taught me that home is not a place but a person. As they finally went inside and prepared for bed, moving through the routines of 25 years of marriage with easy familiarity, Zara reflected on how perfect their life had become. Not perfect in the sense of being without challenges or difficulties. They had faced plenty of both over the years. But perfect in the sense that they had faced everything together, supporting each other through every season. They lay in bed, Zara's head on Pierce's chest, listening to his heartbeat. This was home, this moment, this man, this love. The blizzard had brought them together, but they had chosen each other every day since then. And they would continue to choose each other through whatever storms the future might bring. I love you, Zara murmured, already half asleep. I love you too, Pierce replied, his voice deep and warm. Always and forever you are my home. Outside, the wind whispered through the mountains, a gentle sound now rather than the violent roar of that long-ago blizzard. But inside the ranch house, warmth and love reigned supreme, a testament to what two people could build when they found each other in the storm and chose to create something lasting. The years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays, graduations and weddings, births and eventually peaceful passings. Pierce and Zara grew old together, their hair turning gray, their steps becoming slower, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming richer and more precious with each passing year. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by 3 children, 12 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. The ranch had been passed to Tommy, who ran it with his own children now. But Pierce and Zara still lived in the house they had built together, too attached to the memories to move elsewhere. 50 years, Pierce said during the anniversary celebration, his voice not as strong as it once was but still full of emotion. 50 years since that blizzard brought my Zara to my door, best storm of my life. Everyone laughed, having heard the story countless times but never tiring of it. It had become family legend, the romantic tale of how their grandparents met during a snowstorm and fell in love over 3 snowbound days. One of the great-grandchildren, a curious 6-year-old girl, tugged on Zara's sleeve. "Great-grandma, did you really know right away that great-grandpa was the one?" Zara smiled and pulled the child onto her lap. "I did, sweetness. The moment I saw him standing in that doorway, something in my heart recognized him. It took my head a little longer to catch up, but my heart knew immediately." "That is so romantic," the little girl sighed. "It is," Zara agreed. "But you know what is even more romantic? The 50 years that came after, the choosing each other every single day through good times and hard times. That is the real love story." Pierce reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of 5 decades of practice. "Your great-grandmother is very wise," he told the little girl. "Listen to her." As the sun set on their 50th anniversary, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose, Pierce and Zara sat together on their porch one last time, watching the familiar landscape that had been the backdrop to their entire married life. "No regrets?" Pierce asked softly. "Not a single one," Zara replied firmly. "Only that we will not have another 50 years, Pierce said, "but I am grateful for every moment we have had." They sat in peaceful silence as darkness fell and stars began to emerge overhead. The same stars that had shone on that long-ago blizzard, on their wedding day, on every significant moment of their lives together. Constant and eternal, like their love. Pierce passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years later at the age of 84. Zara held his hand as he drew his last breath, whispering that she loved him, that she would see him again soon, that he had been the best part of her life. True to her word, she followed him just 6 months later, her heart unable to bear being separated from him for long. They were buried together on a hillside overlooking the ranch, beneath the mountains that had brought them together and watched over their love story. Their gravestone bore a simple inscription, "Pierce and Zara Vaughn. The blizzard brought them together. Love kept them forever." Their descendants continued to tell their story, generation after generation, about the schoolteacher caught in a blizzard and the cowboy who sheltered her. About 3 snowbound days that turned into a lifetime of love. About 2 people who found home in each other. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through the generations, each inheritor understanding the love and labor that had built it. The school Zara had founded evolved and grew, eventually becoming a full elementary school that served the entire valley, still bearing her name. On winter evenings, when blizzards swept down from the mountains just as they always had, family members would gather around the fire and tell the story again. They would talk about great-great-grandparents Pierce and Zara, about the storm that changed everything, about the love that lasted a lifetime. And sometimes, when the wind howled just right and the snow swirled outside the windows, the younger children would swear they could feel that love still present, woven into the very fabric of the house and the land. The echo of 2 souls who had found each other in the storm and built something beautiful that would last long after they were gone. Because some loves are too powerful to be contained by a single lifetime. Some loves become legend, inspiration, proof that home is not a place you find but a person you choose. And that sometimes the worst storms bring the greatest blessings. Pierce and Zara's story lived on, a reminder that love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, that home can be found in unexpected places, and that sometimes all it takes is 3 snowbound days to change your entire life. Their love had been tested by time and strengthened by challenges, growing deeper and more precious with each passing year. And in the end, that was their legacy. Not just the ranch or the school or the descendants, though those were all important. Their true legacy was the love they had shared, the partnership they had built, the proof that when 2 people choose each other completely, they can create something that lasts forever. The blizzard had kept them snowbound together. She had realized the cowboy had been her home all along. And from that realization, they had built a love story for the ages, one that would be told and retold as long as there were mountains in Colorado and descendants who remembered. A love story that proved home is not where you are but who you are with, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a storm and a stranger who becomes everything.